So I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I think I was about 10 years old, give or take a couple years. Christmas morning, I walked into our den, and there is a brand new desk set up with a computer at it for the very first time in our home. And I walked over to it, I remember this very vividly, I walked over to it and tapped on the screen because I'd seen computers in desks before, and it was at Mathis Brothers, and they were all cardboard. So I needed to make sure that this was the real deal. And it was the real deal, and once we turned it on, I had heard about this newish kind of thing that was going on, the internet. I had heard about it, and so I saw a little symbol, looked like just a round world or whatever. And I clicked it said internet, so I just clicked on it. I was like, do I have access to everything now? What is it? I don't know how this works. It's just a little icon, so I clicked on it, and turns out you have to be connected or something. So I didn't have access at that point, but it was, in the coming years, we eventually got connected to the internet. Since then, we've come a little ways. The things we can do now with the internet, the things that are available to us at our fingertips, is I would say it's pretty far beyond what I imagined that day as a boy when I was clicking on that internet symbol thinking, oh, I can look up the meaning to words now. I didn't know what I was going to be able to do. But this is why I want to make sure you guys know November 6th here at Central, we're going to have a seminar called Protect Young Eyes, Defending Kids from Online Dangers. So this seminar, let me tell you who it's for. It's for teenagers. It's for the people who look after teenagers, and it's for anyone who has any influence over a child. So let me effectively invite every single one of you to come and experience Protect Young Eyes, because the internet now is the most advanced thing on the planet, and it is wonderful in so many ways. It helps connect us and do so many great things in so many ways, and it is also the scariest territory anyone can possibly enter. There are so many dangers, and there's a lot of people in this room who in their head right now are thinking, yep, been there. There are so many dangers. There are some people who have spent a lot of time thinking about how to protect ourselves, how to guard ourselves from a lot of those dangers. And if you think you know a little bit about how to guard yourself, if you thought that yesterday, this morning you're probably behind again. It's advancing so quickly. Please come and see what's going on and how to currently in our modern age protect your eyes and young eyes from all the things going on the internet. So I want to make you guys aware of that. I want to give a few shout outs this morning. One to our Houston group who left bright and early Thursday morning, and they took off and have gotten to work, and they're actually going to be going to church with the Impact Church this morning and heading back. We got just a few slides just to show you from their time there. We have two of our youth ministers, Mike and Kevin, doing what they do best, which is probably up chicky at that point. I'm not sure, but they are just loving on those kids. Our next picture, we have Reagan Davenport and Emily Kimes staying sanitized as they serve, as they work. Picture three is a group picture with our new response team T-shirts, working in their warehouse there. Their warehouse is enormous. I mean, it could hold probably a couple basketball courts. I mean, it's big, and that thing has been filled up and emptied out. I think the recent count was over 13 times. With the donations that they've taken in and then gotten back into the hands of the people that need it. So that's them at their warehouse doing all the organizing they can possibly do. Picture 5, there's Rachel Kinslow doing some face painting. They had a great night with some kids where they sang with them and games and face paint and all that great stuff. So Rachel getting to work there. And our last one is, I think the face that you can see is Grant Bridges. and the other faces are kind of turned away. I think Dale Brzee and a couple others are in that. The fact that that room looks like that, I know whose house that is, because the first trip we went down, we went to the same house. And the fact that the walls look like that, the ceilings look like that, is unbelievable. This group went in and did, you see the taping and mudding that's gone on the walls. Mary, the lady whose house this is, did not expect that at all. She expected maybe some more cleanup and help out. She didn't expect the rebuilding process to begin already. And so she just poured out her love and affection and thanks on our group. And she is the sweetest, kindest-hearted lady. So great to do ministry alongside her. So that's our group. Continue to be praying for them on their trip back today. Want to also give a quick shout out. As Brett mentioned, we have a couple youth groups here. New Hope and Oakdale. Why don't you guys stand up? Let everybody know how many people is actually here. So Oakdale is the church that I was employed at prior to Park Plaza, and so lots of love and affection for that group. And their youth minister, John T. Out of everyone I've never met before this weekend, I have more close personal mutual friendships with John T. Langley than anybody else. John T. actually interned. We have a couple former interns in this group, John T. and Hunter Wilkerson. You guys know and love them, and so we got great people here, great youth group kids. I actually have as sponsors 3 of my former youth group kids who are actually sponsors on this trip here, which to me says, and I want to communicate this all to you guys, really pay attention to the weird kids because they can turn out great. I mean, they are top of their game, and you guys tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm not wrong. But these guys are top of the ladder right now. Could not be more proud of them and just love them so much. And my last shout out is to, I am going to preach here in a minute. My last shout out is to my wife, Amanda, who at 10 o'clock last night was dodging a tornado in a storm shelter in Norman, and is here and got here early enough to pray over me at home, and is just an absolutely amazing person, and you are literally the greatest, and I love you so much, and I'm so glad you're here this morning. Stop. Want to let you guys know, there's our culture. I don't want to say too much about this, but just let you guys know what's happening. At the end of any sermon you hear, you are always welcome to come down. I want to make that very known. You are very welcome to come down and share your prayers with us, and share your needs, whatever you want to bring before us or the church. But also, sometimes we have things that we want to be prayed about, but we don't want to walk all the way down here and tell something about it. My phone number is going to be on the bottom of the screen during the invitation song. If you have a prayer request, or if you just want something prayed over, I want you to feel free to text that number. Put your name on it. Even if you think I have your number, put your name on it, please. And I would love just to be able to pray for things and get those prayer requests in front of whoever you would like me to get those in front of. I probably won't check them during the invitation song. I'll wait till after it's all over and look at those. But I want you guys to have some way to respond, some way to get prayer requests, even if you're not 100% comfortable coming down here. We want there to be some way, and we're going to continue to be thinking about all the ways that we can respond to your responses, and for you guys to be able to respond well to wherever the Lord's putting on your heart, whatever you guys want to do. So now it's preaching time, and I want to first give Mitch a big thank you, because he's out of town. He's in Abilene. He's in Abilene this morning, and he's also speaking in Wichita, Kansas tonight. So he's got a long day. But the sermon he left for myself and Clint and Will is one of the more difficult passages in the entire New Testament for me. So I want to say thank you a great deal to Mitch for his kind-heartedness in leaving one of the hardest passages in the New Testament that I've ever come across. So I'm grateful that Mitch is able to be with family this morning. But we're gonna be in Mark chapter 7. Before we get into that, when was the last time you felt offended? We're living in an age of pretty highly offendable people, are we not? Amen is right. We're offended all the time. It just takes a few words to the wrong people, and our day can be thrown off. We just believe things can be a certain way or should be a certain way, and if it's not, then we kind of get thrown off. And the internet, as we talked about earlier, is a major offender here. It's the problem of a lot of our offense because we read things on the internet and we get offended. But the internet also does a good job of helping balance that by poking fun of the people who are getting offended, which is also probably offensive. But anyway, let's look at some of these ways that the internet has bounced back to address this problem. There should be a remake of Back to the Future 2 where there are no flying cars, but just people staring at their phones all the time and getting offended at everything. Next slide. People who get offended on the internet are the same people that take mini golf too seriously. Maybe that's true. If you're going to be offended all the time, maybe the internet isn't the place for you. And this is my favorite. I'm offended that you're offended by my taking offense at your offensiveness. Okay, we just get offended a lot. So you know what being offended does? It's kind of like setting yourself on fire and hoping that the smoke bothers somebody. So we're gonna look at, hopefully by the end of this, we can be a little bit less offendable. So we get to this passage. So we've been in the book of Mark, dealing with difficult and shocking statements from the book of Mark, and we have a statement in here that is very shocking. And it's not the kind of shocking like Jesus did another miracle. The disciples were shocked and amazed that he calmed the storm. And if we're shocked and amazed by a miracle that Jesus did, of course we should be. That's an appropriate response. But that wouldn't really surprise any of you guys here this morning. Now we get to the actual shocking nature of when there is a very offensive line given. A very offensive statement made by Jesus. Okay, I don't know, it took me a while to know how to handle this, but there's an offensive statement by Jesus. But actually, there's another statement in this story that we're going to look at that is even more shocking than the statement of Jesus. So let's get to what we're talking about. Mark 7. Starting verse 24, you can follow along. Jesus left that place and went to the vicinity of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know it, yet he could not keep his presence secret. In fact, as soon as she heard about him, a woman whose little daughter was possessed by an evil spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek, born in Syrian Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter. Here's Jesus' response. First, let the children eat all they want, he told her, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs. Yes, Lord, she replied, but even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Then he told her, for such a reply, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. She went home and found her child lying on the bed, and the demon was gone. So where are we? We're in the city of Tyre. Tyre is a Greek city-state. So it is a Greek culture who has gained Roman citizenship in the Roman Empire. And if we read Galatians 3:28, this is important statement here. Galatians 3:28. There is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. That's not the point of this morning, but I want you to hear is there's Jew and Greek, slave and free, male and female. So the difference between Jews and Greeks is, as Paul writes, as big a difference as there is between men and women. Okay? Large, massive difference between Jews and Greeks. And so we're in a Greek city-state within the Roman Empire. It's a religious culture, but known for serving multiple gods, pagan culture. So who are we talking about? Let's look at our main characters for a second. We have Jesus. We have a Jew who has gone into a Greek culture. Okay? Now we can recognize the stark contrast we have there. We have Jesus, a Jew, who's going now into this, away from his Jewish confines. He's left Jerusalem, and now he's going into this Greek city-state. And we have a woman fighting for the health of her daughter, who is possessed by an evil spirit. Now she wasn't necessarily an outcast of her culture. It's likely that she had no husband. There's no husband here. She's fighting for the health of her daughter on her own. But it's likely that the husband was not in the picture, probably for an honorable reason. He may have passed away. There's no mention of it, but that this is the woman that we're dealing with. So those are our two characters. So let's look at the details of the scene. So Jesus tries to enter a house secretly. Doesn't want anybody to know about it, but his cover was blown. And a Greek woman runs to him and falls at his feet, asking him to free her daughter from the demon, from the evil spirit. There are several layers to what's happening here that we need to know what's happening in this story. We have a man approached by a woman. For a woman to have verbal communication with a man that's not her husband is unacceptable in both Jewish and Greek cultures. So for her to approach him just as a female to a male, to approach him like this is not really an acceptable thing to do. We have a Jew being approached by a Greek, which we go back to the difference between those. We don't know if she was Greek by birth or by culture or what, just that she lived in that area, but it's enough to know that she's definitely not a Jew. So this approach from a cultural standpoint was at least countercultural, if not unacceptable socially altogether. And Jesus was hoping not to be noticed, which tells me he had some idea of what he wanted to do there. It doesn't tell us why Jesus went to Tyre, to this area. I think we'll get an idea later on, but it doesn't tell us why. But at the very least, he wasn't openly inviting people into his home, into this house that he was in at the moment. So for this woman now to run into this house, fall at Jesus' feet, and start begging to him, socially, culturally, totally unacceptable. So now Jesus has to find some quick way to respond to this. Because she's a Greek, their culture is polytheistic. There's good enough reason to believe that her coming to Jesus was just because her daughter needed help, and Jesus was the next best thing, and nothing else would work. So I'll go try Jesus, and if that doesn't work, then I'll go try something else. Her groveling humility could really easily be seen as just sort of this token to get the prize from the vending machine of miracles. Like I'm just gonna go beg and maybe he'll give me what I want. And if not, I'll go try something else. There's plenty of reason to believe that's the case here, because of the cultural differences here. So now Jesus has to respond. And culturally, we would think there's plenty of reason for her to dismiss her. But we know, Isaiah 55, my ways are not your ways, your thoughts are not my thoughts. So surely, Jesus is going to say something to her that is extra loving, extra graceful, extra merciful. So here's Jesus' response. It's not right to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. I try to do all kinds of mental gymnastics to get around this being an incredibly offensive statement. Surely, maybe in their culture, dogs meant something. Maybe he's not really talking. Maybe he's not. No, he called her a dog. Didn't really know how to handle that for a while. So there's two Greek words for dog in the New Testament. There's one that's like a loose, rabid dog, and there's one that's more like pet. This one, to be fair, is the version of it that is the kind of pet version of dog. House dog, but it's still dog. He still calls her, he refers to her as a dog. So why? Why does he use this derogatory, insensitive comment directed at this woman? I want you to sit with this just for a second, so you can get to maybe some level of how uncomfortable this was to start looking to preach from. This is hard. So, does he do it because it's a disrespect for women? Does Jesus have a disrespect for women? Don't forget Mary and Martha. Don't forget the woman at the well that he approached and had a conversation with in John 4. Don't forget the woman that washes his feet with her hair in Luke 7. The woman who anointed Jesus with oil in Matthew 26. You can go on with ways that Jesus honored and loved and appreciated and respected women. So it's not obviously a woman thing. So did he disrespect her because of her culture or her race? It's a pretty hot topic these days. Disrespect somebody because of their race, because of where they come from, because of the color of their skin. So, but we can't forget the story of the Good Samaritan. That story is all about looking at people from other cultures in a different way. So it can't be this cultural thing that Jesus is caught up on. So is it just that she's an unworthy person? Just her it's not about her culture or race, it's just her. Well, we also can't forget that at the end of the story, she is commended by Jesus for having faith, and she receives the healing that she asked for. So why in the world would he call her a dog? What was it that changed from Jesus calling her a dog to Jesus commending her for her faith? She revealed her heart. You don't have to be around my house very long before you hear a certain phrase that we use that Amanda really has taught me to use well. Our 2 and 4-year-old ask for things fairly often, and rarely is it the first time that they ask in a really healthy, respectful way. Often, I think they more act like Veruca Salt. You guys know what we're talking about? It's more, the first time is maybe often more like this. I don't care how, I want it now. It's more like that. Willy Wonka fans, anybody? No? Okay. So it's more like that sometimes than I'm comfortable with right away. And so that's not gonna go over real well at our house. So my first reaction sort of wants to be, if that's the way you want to ask, I'm going to give you a big bag of nothing and send you to a nice long stay at Hotel Timeout. But it turns out that's maybe not the most graceful way to approach it. So Amanda comes along more gracefully as always and uses this very short phrase, try again. The way you've approached me is not acceptable. Try again. Because it seems like what you're asking me right now is that you don't care who it is that gets it for you. You don't care where it came from. You don't care anything else about it. You just want it. And so you're just asking in a way that doesn't really respect anyone else. So when we say, try again, what we really want to see in them is a grateful heart. We want to see some inkling or teach at some level. You know, they're 2 and 4, so, you know, a lot of grace here. But we want to teach on some level that when we ask for things, we ask with a grateful, thankful heart. So what Jesus responded to here was her heart. The statement about her being a dog is really a test of sorts. If she gets offended and leaves, that means she just sees Jesus as one option of many and is not actually honoring who he is. So would you have been offended here? Man, this culture, there's a lot of us that would be very offended at the way Jesus talked to her here. Like I said, we're a very offendable culture, and we believe things should be a certain way. So what would it take for you to be unoffendable? There's a great new book out by that title, Unoffendable, that I'd recommend you go take a look through. The things I'm most offended by are the things that I am fully invested in and the things that I feel like are most true about myself, my culture, and the world around me. So when those things are threatened or diminished in any way, that's when I get really offended, are the things that I feel like are true about my culture, myself, and the world around me. And there's a word that we're really, really pretty guilty of that is a major problem when it comes to being offended. It's the word entitlement. You guys recognize the issue with how entitled of a culture we are, and entitled being things being the way that I think they should be, and if not, I'm offended, is the definition of entitlement. And our culture supports this unbelievably well. Take a look at some of these slides of things that have been given to us that have made us entitled. This is a drive-through convenience store. People, it was a convenient store. And somebody said, how can we make that easier? I don't really want to get out of my car. Seriously? And because somebody thought that, somebody built it. Anybody ever used the Walmart grocery pickup? I know we have. It's an amazing thing. But to think that the food has been grown or prepared, packaged, organized in a air-conditioned environment, we can walk in and just put it in a basket. And somebody said, nah, that needs to be easier. And we made it easier. And so we continue to become entitled. You guys recognize the term on demand? What do you think of when you think of on demand? Do you think of TV? Well, what about on-demand security? There's on-demand TV, on-demand doctor, on-demand fitness, on-demand Gillette. And you can actually get the Met Opera on demand. I don't know, that's some big Italian guy with a wig showed up at your house singing Ave Maria. I don't know exactly what on-demand opera looks like, but you can get opera on demand. We are on demand in everything that we do. So we've created this culture to where if things are not as we want them to be, and nobody's willing to make them as we want them to be, we become entitled, and entitlement is the first step to building a world that you are constantly offended. That your senses are constantly bombarded with things that aren't just the way that you want them to be. No, not to mention the times when people actually insult you. We can get offended. We get offended at a lot of things, even falling short of there's an actual insult to you as a person. That used to be how we got offended. Now it's way broader than that. But there's a problem with that. If we claim to be Christians, then you have said effectively that you have put your old self to death and now live with Christ. So according to Colossians 3, let's put that Colossians 3 passage up there. Since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things, for you died and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ who is your life appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. Put to death whatever belongs to your earthly nature. And it goes on from there. So if we claim to be Christians, we have died to the part of ourselves that becomes offended by everything the world has to offer us. We have died to the part of ourselves that this world can offend. This is a really scary test, and possibly some toes stepped on here, but I'm one of them, so I can say this. If you want to know if you are entitled in any way, if you're guilty of that at all, how often in the past week have you been offended? What is there something, a couple things in the past week, even the past month, that you have felt offended? And that might tell you or give you a clue at your level of entitlement. And please hear me, this does not mean that we're never impacted by the decisions of others and never need to step up and say something and speak and act. All this means is I'm going to choose not to be thrown off balance when the world acts like the world. Because if I am fully invested only in God, then he is my source of truth for everything. So nothing that any human says or does can shake me. So I am now unoffendable because I feel entitled to nothing. Because I know where all of my life comes from, and it's not for me. So when I can get to the point where I feel entitled to nothing because I know that all my life is hidden in Christ, I've died to my old self, I am all in with Christ, then the part of myself that used to be able to be offended no longer exists. So we get back to the story. So in essence, what Jesus says is, what I have to give is incredibly valuable. And the way you've approached me is like a dog who just wants it handed to her because she begged for it. And for that, you get nothing. So you thought that what Jesus said was a shocking statement. But we get to the real shocking statement. That this Greek woman, having every reason to be offended, doesn't ignore the fact that she's been called a dog. She owns it. You can also almost hear her tone change from this frantic mother to this laser-focused, firm believer in the power of Jesus Christ. Because in this moment, she is unoffendable. Because she says, yes, Lord, but even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. In essence, she says, yes, Lord, I understand. I understand I'm not worthy. But even if you let me have one crumb from your plate of blessings, that's all I need. That's all I want. That's all I came for, because I know that one crumb from your plate of blessings is everything that I need. She persists because she knows that Jesus isn't just her next best option, but he is her only hope. Because she remains humble, accepting the insult and recognizing the lordship of Jesus, not just for her in that moment, but for everyone as a statement of truth of the world. And he commends her. This story you can find in two places in the Gospels, one here in Mark 7, the other in Matthew 15. In the Matthew 15 version, he commends her for having great faith. So we need to look at what are our takeaways here. We need to look at who the audience is. The audience is, well, obviously the woman to start with. And so here's our first takeaway. It's not until we see Jesus as our final and only hope that he recognizes that we have the type of faith that heals, forgives, and saves. And it's because of that faith that I am unoffendable, because I have faith in the one who gave me this life. But there's another audience, and maybe this is the more realistic audience of this conversation. They're not mentioned in the Mark version, but in the Matthew version, it's very clear the disciples are there with him. And in Matthew 15 version, actually in both passages, they had just finished a conversation about what it means to be clean and unclean. So Mark 7 and Matthew 15 both start out with this passage of what it means to be clean and unclean. And Jesus makes a very clear point that what comes out of a man is not what makes him unclean. For within, out of a man's heart comes evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these things come from inside a man and make him unclean. And you can kind of see that he looks at them and says, you guys need to know what that looks like. Because it's going to be you guys who are responsible for this message, for this gospel message, to get out to all cultures of the world. And if there's any hesitance with you guys and the other cultures that are going to receive this, then it's going to die. So I need you guys to see what it looks like for this culture, for this message to be received and accepted in cultures other than our own. So he takes his disciples on a little road trip out of their comfort zone into the heart of the Greek culture of the Roman Empire. And a woman from within that culture who they would see as unclean approaches him. And so when he says, it's not right to give the dogs what the children really should have, I almost get the idea that maybe he's not looking at her, but he's looking at them. Because they're going to agree with him. Yeah, you're right, Jesus. But then her response shows Jesus and shows his disciples that it's what comes from within a person that makes them clean or unclean. And in front of his disciples, he commends this Greek woman from a totally different culture for having great faith. Not just for having some faith, but she is commended for having great faith. 2 Corinthians 5, from now on we regard no one from a worldly point of view. And Christ says, because I have come to reconcile all of us back to God. All of us. And so the other point for this morning is man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So we can see that there's a necessity in our lives to focus on God, to have a laser focus on him, that nothing else from the world can knock us up. You know what being offended is being off-ended. Something that knocks you over. My focus is on God. There's nothing that this world has to say to me that's going to off-end me. Because my focus is on him. My focus is on God. And so for that, I can live unoffendable. And because of that, and this is maybe the entire point of the whole thing, because of that, now I can see people like Jesus does. And what's the result of us being able to see people like Jesus does? Little girls have evil spirits removed from them. We are released from the powers of this dark world because we keep our focus on Jesus. They no longer have any hold on us. So what is it that's gotten to you? Has there been something that has offended you? Have we taken our focus off of the lordship of Jesus Christ as not just a good option, but as our one final and only hope in this world? Please know that you're welcome to come down front and share your prayers with us. But if there's anything that you have to share with us, you can come forward or text me as we stand and as we sing.